Welcome back to the show, guys. Before we start, a quick announcement. Top and I have teamed up with PurgeSuddenly.com to bring our listeners this awesome opportunity. From now until March 15th, any purchase of Nephilim Death Squad merch from Lobsta.com will enter you automatically into a raffle for a chance to win a triple pack of Purge Advanced Parasite Cleanse and a bottle of Digestimes Plus from PurgeSuddenly.com. What if I told you that more people have died from parasites than have died in war? What if I told you that cancer, acne rosacea, multiple sclerosis, and rheumatoid arthritis can all be treated with parasite medication? With a triple pack of Purge Advanced Parasite Cleanse, you can rid your own body of these all too common parasites with ingredients like zinc, carrot powder, garlic, black walnut. It's made from all natural ingredients, not harmful for your body. And on top of it, the Digestimes promote healthy gut bacteria and aid in digestion. While you're there, any of the other products, as well as the triple pack and the Digestimes, can be purchased with a promo code Nephilim, Nephilim, for 10% off, and be entered into this raffle to win a triple pack of Purge Advanced Parasite Cleanse and a bottle of Digestimes Plus from PurgeSuddenly.com. And guys, don't forget, if you're looking for other ways to support the show, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad, and you can help us out that way as well. All right, let's get into the show.
We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers.
We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely enormous.
Oh yeah, dude. There's some Nephilim shit.
It's like we all know what's going down, but no one's saying shit what happened to the home of the brave. These motherfuckers, they controlling us now, and no one's talking about how they made us modern-day slaves. And everybody's just walking around, head in the clouds, and won't awaken to a dead in the grave. But then it's too late, we need to be ready to raise up. Welcome to the end of days. Everybody is slaves, only some are aware.
I blew it again.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, everyone, to Nephilim Death Squad. I am David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven. That's Top Lobsta. Before we introduce today's guest, I just want to remind everybody of a few things. The raffle for Purge Suddenly is over today. So today is your last opportunity to go to toplobster.com, pick up some merch, and be entered into the Purge Suddenly raffle. And we're going to be announcing winners, I imagine probably sometime next week. Today's Friday, so maybe sometime during the week we're going to announce them. Also, go to samtripoli.com, check out his events section, and click on March 30th. We're closing in, guys. We only got 15 days left. Get your tickets at samtripoli.com for March 30th so that you can come down to the Joke Joint in Summerfield, Florida, and hang out with us and Sam Tripoli while we do a live podcast with Sam, as well as a live signing of his comic book, Chaos Twins. I actually have the first edition. I'm looking at it right over there. So if you have the Chaos Twins and you want Sam Tripoli to sign it, and you also want to see us do a live podcast with Sam Tripoli, go to samtripoli.com, click on events, and click on March 30th. See you guys at the Joke Joint. I'm very happy to introduce our guest today. I haven't spoken to her since the early days of the Ravens Watch, which I think we had a phenomenal episode. I highly recommend for people to go and check out that episode. The Ravens Watch will come back one day once this is a full-time gig, but that episode was like one of my favorite conversations. Vicki Joy Anderson is joining us today to talk about her book, They Come Out at Night, amongst a plethora of other things related to disembodied Nephilim spirits and sleep paralysis. Vicki, how are you doing? It's been a while.
It has been a while. I'm so glad to be back. This is great. Thanks for having me on. And this is just my kind of crowd. I can just lay back and let it flow. I don't have to self edit. You know, sometimes you've got like the really old school, like pew warming people on that don't like anything I say. Then you've got like people all the way over here that don't like the pew warming stuff I say. So I'm just going to let it all fly and we'll see what comes out.
That's perfect. You know, I was worried about, we had L.A. Marzulli on a couple months ago, and I was worried that, I was like, because me and David, we're like kind of retarded. We're not going to be able to control like how we can't be professional. So I was like, oh my God, I hope L.A. does. And he came on and I felt like I had a blast with him because he's a wild man underneath. I could tell. I love it.
He is. He is. He's very serious about what he does, but he is a cool cat. He's California chill and hilarious and can take a joke, can give a joke. Like, I think when you meet him, he maybe comes off a little differently than you expect. He's a great guy.
Yeah,
You know what's funny is
relieved.
he actually told Top during the episode that he was going to wash his mouth out with soap, and I
really
almost
curse.
cried. He didn't even I don't even think you cursed. I don't know what you said. You might have said "damn it" or something. It was something mild. And
Yeah.
he said, and he has this thing, Vicky. I don't know if you've seen it. It's like every time he does like pistol fingers or something like that, or thumbs up, it makes fireworks, and he doesn't know how to stop it. So he's like shooting fireworks off the entire time, and he's telling Top that he's gonna wash his
He's
mouth
like, hey,
out with
watch
soap.
your mouth, young man. I'm gonna wash your mouth. And there's like,
God.
there's like hearts falling from behind him. I'm like, this is crazy. I don't know what's going on right now.
I'm jealous. I got nothing.
I don't know how he does it.
I'm shooting
I don't know
blanks.
how he does it. I don't think he should fix it either. I'd love to meet him in person. I know he's doing stuff in Orlando right now. I think that just passed. It would have been cool to have made that, but it was kind of like short notice when we figured out that it was happening. Maybe next year, if he does the rounds again, we'll make it out there and see him. But you're part of this this conglomeration of kind of. I don't want to call you guys content creators, right? Because you're an author and you're also above being a content creator. It's like your number one mission from where I'm sitting is to make people aware that we're engaged in spiritual warfare and to ideally aim them in the correct direction, right? And so I think that far exceeds content creators, but you are part of this cool group of people that is yourself, L.A. Marzulli, Karen Wilkinson just recently joined the team. This is somebody that we're hoping to have on soon. Can you tell me a little bit about like how you got linked up with L.A.?
Oh, it's crazy. I shouldn't say this because he'll get bombarded now, but no, this is totally out of character for me, you guys. I'm this like stoic, introverted, antisocial, self-loathing Swedish Scandinavian girl who never speaks unless spoken to. And so I had this idea for this book, and I wrote up like a book proposal, and I wasn't even asking people to publish the book because I never would have asked that much of an ask, right? And so it was literally kind of like this, vague sort of like, hey, can I network with you, or can you put an endorsement on the back cover? I was just going to put it out on Kindle, and so I handed out like 8 of these proposals, and I figured out who I was going to hand them to, at these different conferences that I went to. And I really knew in my heart I was supposed to give one to LA, but I didn't really know LA, and I hadn't really spoken to him, and I was really intimidated for some reason to just cold call, go up to his table, and like there's something just so like entitled and arrogant to me about, oh, you don't know me, publish my book. Like, it was so out of my comfort zone, and I was so convinced that I was going to wimp out that I legitimately went out of my way and asked a few people to like pray that I don't wimp out, because I don't want to do this. So I show up at the hotel, like the day of the conference, and who comes out of the hotel as I'm unloading my car but L.A. Marzulli and one of the other guys. And they walked over to me and were like, hey, hi, how are you doing and everything. And because I knew the other guy. And so I was talking to the other guy. And at one point I looked up at L.A. and he just locked eyes with me and gave me a really warm smile. And it just kind of like set all my fears to rest. Like, oh, this is an approachable guy. This is not an arrogant, like, I don't have time for you kind of guy. So later on, kind of like hand joke to kind of like this icebreaker joke. And I don't even remember what it was. It was probably really corny, but I cracked this joke and he died laughing. And I don't know if it was a mercy laugh or not. If it was a mercy laugh, he's an even nicer guy, right? But he genuinely laughed. And so that kind of set me at ease. And so I handed him this proposal. I'm like, look, I never do anything like this. This is just ridiculous. But I kind of gave him my little elevator speech and walked off. And honestly, I thought, okay, I've handed out these 8 proposals. I don't expect to hear a word back from any of these people, because this isn't like, some sort of like 1980s Saved by the Bell episode where you hand a Hollywood producer a script and he gives you a call back, right? Like, that's ridiculous. That doesn't happen to people. And so I walked off, and I really was just content with the fact that I went super far outside of my comfort zone, and I was able to do something that I normally would never be able to do. And I was just proud of myself for following through. And there's something just so gratifying about taking a risk, especially when it's associated with like your dream or your calling. And so I kind of walked away feeling like that's done. I can move on with my life. I did not expect anything to come from it. So I'd say like maybe 3 months later, I'm coming back from we had a cabin that there was no Wi-Fi or anything up there. It was like deep in the woods. So I had been offline for a few days. So I finally get back into Wi-Fi territory, and I check my voicemails, and there's a number that's not coming up in my caller ID, and it says Beverly Hills, California. And I'm like, what? I don't know anyone from Beverly Hills. And so it's a voicemail, and it's just like, hey, Vicki, this is L.A. Marzulli, and I got to talk to you. I got to talk to you about this book proposal. And it was very nebulous. And so I thought, okay, he might be just doing the thanks, but no thanks, because he's a nice guy. He didn't give any indication like what he wanted to talk about. Maybe he just wanted to ask a bunch of clarifying questions. Maybe he was going to give me a contact of someone. I didn't know. So I called him the next day, and I was extremely nervous, and I left a voicemail, and I probably sounded like a high school girl, like trying to ask a guy out on Sadie Hawkins, like, hi, LA. It was like horrible, right? But he called me back, and he's kind of making small talk. And we're like maybe 45 seconds into small talk. And he said, well, I'm just going to cut to the chase. I'm going to publish your book.
Wow.
I mean, this is one of those once in a lifetime lottery ticket kind of moments where you're like, what? I mean, I was so stunned, but because this is the way life goes, you guys, as soon as I got off the phone, called my dad, freaked out, all that stuff, the elation was immediately replaced with terror. Like, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah, because it's like, now I wrote this and people might see it.
People
my
might
God, I didn't
see
think about
it. People might see it. And it was just a proposal. The book hadn't been written yet. And I'm like, what if I can't pull this off? There's 100 what ifs, right? And then as I started writing it, then I was overcome with this fear that what if LA reads the book, decides it absolutely sucks, and reneges and says like, forget it. And I have to go through all these like, junior high memories of rejection. And, I'm like, oh no, I don't have the skin for this, man. But it all worked out a zillion times better than I ever could have imagined. And let me just tell you something about LA. He totally put himself on the line. He took on all the risk, reputational risk. He took on all the financial risk. I was a nobody. He had no idea if I could pull off writing a book, if I had anything knowledgeable to say. He really took a massive gamble. And so I'm just so thrilled that I was able to pull through for him, and that the book has been so successful, and it has helped so many people. And the feedback I've gotten on it has just been really, at risk of being melodramatic, it's really been life-changing. Because when you're a writer and you just sit at home and you write all your own stuff and you're just writing poetry and there's never really any feedback because you're scared of what people might say, you never really know if you've got it until you let it out there and people tell you what they think about it. And so it was really, I hate these stupid, buzzwords, but it was so empowering. I can't even tell you, like the confidence that it gave me, and to really come into my calling. Because a lot of people, they spend their whole life dreaming about that one thing they want to do. Hey, I want to animate. I want to do comic books. I want to do music. And then they go to business college and they get a desk job and they spend their whole life lamenting, what if. But it is really hard to take that first leap. And unfortunately, we do live in a world where it kind of is not what you know, it's who you know. It's just the nature of the game, unfortunately. So you do need a little bit of luck or providence in there as well. But I don't think I've ever gotten to tell that story. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, LA is just amazing. He's been super supportive, both he and his wife, Peggy. They are just my cheerleaders and encouragers. And I will also tell you that LA is not a micromanager. sit there every step of the way editing my words and rewording things. He gave me total freedom to do whatever I wanted, but he gave me a little bit of feedback before publishing, and I added the couple things that he suggested. I added, and I have to say the two things that I get the most comments on, like, man, that's awesome how you did that. They were his ideas. Like, he knows what he's doing. He's been doing this for a long time, and I really feel more like he's more of like a mentor to me than a publisher of my book. And I just can't say enough good about the guy.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about LA is that, guys like him. So in the comedy world, a guy like him might be someone like Owen Benjamin. We were talking about him in the pre-chat, me and David.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a guy that kind of said the thing first or went in first and took the arrows. And now we're marching in with the show called Nephilim Death Squad like it's normal. But this guy's been doing this stuff for a long time. And, even, conspiracy theorists were calling him, because, man. So, yeah, glad you recognized that in you.
Yes.
And probably someone had to have been through it to be like, all right, I recognize it right away. We'll take the chance. We know what we're doing here already.
Yeah. It was crazy, guys. So, I mean, I'm not suggesting that every single person that goes to a conference throw a book proposal at L.A. Marzulli, but let me tell you.
That's how you do it.
That's how you do it.
It's proven at this point.
We had the very same sentiments that Top just touched on a moment ago there, where it's like he really did kind of make it safe for guys like us to come along and have this discussion and actually be well received. Our audience are sort of diehard fans for the show, but we wouldn't be able to have them if it wasn't for people like L.A. Marzulli or like Gary Wayne, who we spoke to earlier in the shows, I guess probably about 2 months ago now. And it's just funny, yeah, because you do get to come along now and you do get to say these things like they're normal. Yeah. And thank God for those guys.
We did a flip and a roll in, and we're like, "What's up?" We're over here talking about the stuff, and he's over there like bleeding. Like,
I know, isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy? Yeah. Well, you guys, this might surprise you. I have a really, really outside of the box dad, and I don't know where he got this stuff, but my dad has been talking about Area 51, Roswell, the Nephilim. Like, I mean, I remember overhearing conversations at family gatherings or whatever. My dad's been talking about the Nephilim since the 70s, you guys. I'm not joking. Like, everyone was like, the what? And like the giants, and I remember the first time hearing about this, the Genesis 6 narrative from my own dad, basic Christmas dinner fodder, right? But we were always talking about this stuff. And now, when I look back at my dad trying to get people to understand this stuff back in the 70s and the 80s and just getting nothing but crickets, right? And from the church even. And
especially.
Yeah. And just realizing, I mean, like, I don't know where he learned all this, because he didn't have all this information available to him. So I don't know what he was reading and stuff, but all I can say is I can't believe that we are now in a time where people, even people outside of the church, like, you just say Nephilim and people are like, like, they know exactly what you're talking about. And
yes,
I just think it's so exciting that we are finally getting to a point where, especially inside of the church, we're now starting to be able to reintroduce the supernatural aspects of the Bible, because it is an extraordinarily supernatural book. And we've done everything in the last 50 years to hide and cover that up and kind of strip the cultural contextual veneer off of what's going on in a lot of those passages. I mean, there's a lot of new agey, downright occult stuff being described in scripture. I'm not saying it's being affirmed, but it's there. It's all over the place, but we're so far removed from it. And I love the fact, and a lot of people my age, I'm Gen X, but a lot of people my age and older, they have all of these sort of one-dimensional stereotypes about the degradation of the newer generations, right? And I have to tell you, the one thing that I am really appreciative of the younger generations, the millennial and Gen Z, is they aren't afraid to ask questions in the church and be like, no, you're not going to excommunicate me for asking that question. I need to know. This does not make sense. And they pursue biblical knowledge. And that's why I love how Gary Wayne calls himself a contrarian. I think everybody who's truly a believer needs to call themselves that. And that was really a change in perspective for me when I first got familiar with Wayne and his work. And I'm pretty stoked, you guys. I don't know if you've gotten Gen 6 Part 2 yet, but my copy came Monday, and I'm like 4 or 5 chapters into it, and I'm just like geeking out on it. I'm like so excited.
It's funny. I have Gen 6. We have the first one, both Top and I, and it's like 800 pages long or something like that. So it's going to be a little bit before I get through it. My attention span is that of a goldfish. So I'll be here for a while.
I wanted to ask Gary after he was on. I'm like, how do you figure out like what you want for dinner later? Because his brain is so stuffed with all of this other information. Like, where do you have like the basics, or like do you have? I don't know. My brain doesn't work like that.
He's a genius, but he's a walking encyclopedia. That guy.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's funny, Vicki, because you said a moment ago that, you know, to be a contrarian is almost to be on the right path. And I was just talking to Top about this on a previous episode where we had this, you know, what's his name? The famous wrestler who's going through his humiliation, John Cena. John Cena is going through what the general public is describing as a humiliation ritual, which, you know, rewind 10 years, I would have been right there with everybody, except that it wouldn't have been everybody. It would have been a very small group of people saying it was a humiliation. Now that like everybody is saying it, now I'm pulling back and I'm like, I don't know if that's exactly what's going on here, because I'm a contrarian by nature. Once the mob moves in a particular direction, I have to now like hit the brakes and go, I don't know if I want to keep going in this direction. So I think that is like maybe at the heart of, because I think you inherently it's like the expression of lemmings, when all the lemmings run off the cliff together. And it's like, you know, even in Men in Black, they had a really great line where it's like, a person is smart, people are dumb, angry animals or something like that. But it's like, yeah, the group is what's dangerous. So when the group is once the group decides a consensus, I'm not even sure if I believe that anymore. That's just how I am. But Vicki, to start to segue into the context of the book, on the previous episode we did of the Ravens Watch, we went really heavily into your experiences with sleep paralysis. And I think that one of the things that leads people to a large degree to pursue the things that people like us pursue oftentimes can be like a catalyst moment or a series of moments, really. And the thing that makes them significant is that they aren't something someone else can explain away for you. Because a lot of this stuff, when you're dealing with theory or you're dealing with translations, you can get caught up in the minutia. One person can say, well, in ancient Hebrew, it says this, and that word means several different things. And then you can go, well, I tend to go with this translation. And they go, well, I don't know if that's applicable here. And now you can sit there. But when you have an experience that no answer from somebody who didn't experience that with you is satisfactory, that leads you down this kind of tenacious path of looking for answers. And, you know, when I was a kid, I had a bunch of weird stuff happening. And I don't know if I ever told you in the last episode, I think it's something that I came to realize. My grandmother actually was an abductee victim since a child. She was having abduction experiences since childhood. She was seeing bright white lights emerging in her window. She would see a white owl. She would see tiny shadow people. And she ended up, when she was older, reading a book by Whitley Strieber called Communion. A lot of people are familiar with that book. It's an amalgamation of abductee experiences, testimonies, and she believed that it fit her testimony to a T, and that actually really disturbed her. But the thing about my grandmother was
the white owl thing is really significant now after last week.
Yes, yeah. And so what I think was kind of I almost want to say fatal mistake on her behalf, because she did pass away very early. She I think it was, what is it that gets affected with alcoholism? It's like your liver.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she had some sort of disease of the liver that ended up taking her life, because I don't think that she knew how to deal with these things. But the way that she went about doing it was like new age sort of
Mm-hmm.
psychic remote viewing, like a lot of this. She went down a path that, in hindsight, when I look at her works, because she wrote a lot of papers and she drew a lot of really cryptic things, there seemed to be an absence of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't help but feel like that's the path that was, the mistake that she made. And in my life, I'm hoping that I can kind of correct that, because these experiences went on to my mother and my aunt. And now, they've gone on to me, although I think my approach, hopefully, is the correct approach, but I very much feel like it is. But Vicki, your life was, you know, filled with these sorts of things. So I was wondering, can we get into a bit about what it is that set you off in this direction, and then the sort of the contents of the book?
Yeah. Yep. So this started happening to me involuntarily at a very, very young age. I have very specific memories of this kind of starting at age 4, but I have other vague memories that lead me to believe that it happened much earlier. And if I had to go into wild speculation, like wouldn't stand up in court, but I have a strong suspicion. I have a strong suspicion that it might have even started in the hospital after I was born, because uh, my mom left the hospital after like 3-4 days. And I had to stay in the hospital for an entire month. So for the first month of my life, I was, um, unsupervised in a hospital. And I just don't know if there was anyone there who took advantage, right? But certain things have happened to me, again, not conclusive evidence, but there have been certain
Vicky, by take advantage, do you mean like a nurse, like possibly a nurse or somebody kind of like point you out to? Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
I'm talking specifically about maybe some sort of uh, ritual or covenant, or perhaps the withdrawing of blood or DNA that kind of gave them some sort of legal right. Because there are, and the reason I've come to this conclusion is not because I'm a drama queen. It's because in the course of trying to figure this out for over 40 years and talking to a lot of experts and talking to people like Russ Dizdar and working with Through the Black and having the opportunity to speak to a lot of people who are SRA survivors, satanic ritual abuse survivors, who came out of generational occult families, who have understanding of how things work. And in my conveying certain astral experiences that I've had, having people corroborate numerous times that in order for you to be in that particular room or level of the astral realm, or in order for them to be able to perform that particular ritual during a sleep paralysis experience, they would have to have your DNA. They would have to have legal authority to do that. They need the permission. And I talk a lot in my book about permissions and invitation. And I think the best way that we can kind of relate to that in American folklore is there's a lot of similarities with what we would call vampire folklore. They can't cross the threshold without permission. And I just want to expand people's idea of that. That's not just a rule of vampires. That's not just the rule of evil spirits or fallen realm. That is kind of the golden rule of the chasm that's set up between the spiritual realm and the physical realm.
Yeah.
Because
Consent.
consent, because you even see Jesus adhering to this. Jesus can do whatever he wants, right? He can do whatever he wants, but he chooses to make rules and boundaries and keep them. He chooses in some cases to limit himself by boundaries that he sets up. And so you even see this in Revelation 3:20, which I think is a highly misunderstood passage. Revelation 3:20 is what you tell a 5-year-old in Sunday school so that they pray a prayer to receive Jesus, and Jesus is their friend. There is covenantal language in that. So when Jesus says, behold, I stand at the door and knock, if anyone hears my voice and opens the door and invites me in, I will enter and sup with him and he with me.
That's the rule.
That's the rule. So even Jesus is saying, I'm not going to knock down your door. I'm not going to use Holy Spirit magic on you to make you open the door. I'm not going to come in through the back door. And we know from John 10 that anyone who comes in through any other gate but the front gate is a thief and a liar, and thief and a robber. So Jesus isn't going to come anywhere but through the front gate. And we have to open it. But when any time in antiquity, not even biblical antiquity period, all the way up into the mid 1800s, all over the world, people practiced hospitality rituals that were called threshold covenants. And the best example of this is Passover. Yeah. Passover was not this one and done bizarre thing. When they were told to slaughter a lamb and paint the door, that was not unfamiliar to them. That wouldn't have been unfamiliar to the Egyptians that they were living among. It was a hospitality ritual. They would slaughter a lamb. They would paint the lintels of the doorpost. And what that was a covenant. So when someone stepped over the threshold into the home, when that covenant had been made, the patriarch of that home, the high priest of that home, was in essence saying, this is a blood covenant between you and I, that upon my life, if I break this covenant, when you are in my home, you are like a blood-born son or daughter to me. And I will lay down my life for you. I'll feed you. I'll protect you. I'll provide for you. You are now like adopted into my family. So when Jesus says that he wants to step over our threshold, what he's basically saying is, once I'm inside, I'm going to lay down my life for you. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to provide for you. There's going to be provision. There's going to be safety. And the reason why when he steps over the threshold, he wants to basically have dinner with you, I will eat with you and you with me, or I will sup with you, and is because that's another covenant. It's a salt covenant. So when they broke bread in Scripture, bread was the carrier of salt, and salt was a stand-in for blood. It was like the less gorier, less expensive version. It was like the poor man's blood covenant. Because with human beings, if you pull all the blood out of our body, we die. If you pull all the salt out of our body, we die. They're both necessary for our life. And so these are covenants that are being made. And so all sorts of cool stuff. Once you understand the blood covenant and the salt covenant, you will see it all over Scripture from Genesis to Revelation. It's everywhere. It's places you don't even expect to see it. It's amazing. And I'm really fighting the temptation, but I'm not going to go off on that rabbit trail. So these permissions, the permissions are necessary. So going back to what you were talking about with your grandmother, this is the thing with sleep paralysis that everybody has to understand. There's so much we don't know. Every single thing we say about it up to this point, we're speculating, we're theorizing. Because the more we find out about the spirit realm, and the more we find out about technology, and the more we find out about black magic and all of these things, the more we figure these things out, the more we're going to understand some of these things. And I have a hunch, you guys, it's going to be a lot like magic tricks. Like when we go and we see a guy performing a magic trick on stage, and he's got really good sleight of hand and he's good at what he does. We're suspending our belief because we know that it's a trick, but we suspend our disbelief because it's so amazing what they're able to do with sleight of hand. And so the first time we see a magic trick, we are in awe, that we're quite literally mesmerized by it. But as soon as someone divulges the trick, and, they expose like, well, this is how we're doing it. There's a mirror here, or there's actually a second woman in the box. As soon as we figure out what is actually being done, it's this massive letdown. You're like, well, that's stupid.
It's like pro wrestling for me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's real.
It's so real, damn it. How dare you, Vicki?
Bad example. No, I'm just kidding. So it's the same thing. I have a hunch that when all of this paranormal activity is revealed, we're going to go, what? That is so lame. Because I do think a lot of it is smoke and mirrors. Yeah, there are people out there that can harness a little bit of occult power, and they can do their tricks. I mean, even Moses and the Magi were able to turn the staff into serpents, and like, yeah, there's stuff that can be done, and there's a certain level of power that can be harnessed. But I tend to think of the demon world like the Wizard of Oz. Like, once you actually pull back the curtain, it's just this old dude with a microphone. And you're like, really? And even the scripture says this. It says that in the end, when Satan falls to the earth and everyone looks upon him, the nations will say, this is what held the nations in sway? This? It's going to be such a disappointment. And I have genuine empathy for all these people that have dedicated their lives to Satan and Luciferian worship and all these rituals, and who have sacrificed family members, and who have destroyed through trauma and abuse their entire bloodline. And they've done all of this stuff. And they're going to look at this measly little worm on the ground and go, that's what I gave my heart, soul, and life for? This whimpering little worm on the ground, who's destroyed by the breath of Christ in an instant, doesn't even get to put forth his agenda. He's right about to do it, and it says that he's destroyed with the breath of his mouth.
You know what that reminds me of is this, and this is a rumor that I can't confirm, but I have heard, this is something that gets passed around sort of conspiracy circles, is that Anton LaVey on his deathbed, the last words that he sort of muttered were, "What have I done?" And it was this idea that, you know, to me, that just sounds like a guy who, just before he left this realm, you know, he was able to see the mistake that he made, maybe what it was, like Vicky's alluding to, what it was that he was serving, or just, you know,
Well,
the folly.
look at what they're serving. It's kind of insane to see people either be atheist or Satanists, because I'm like, Satanists are well versed in the Bible, so I'm like, you know how it ends, right? But you're still gonna, okay, keep going. But who you're following, and I think about Lucifer, Satan a lot. Like, what is his motivation? Because we know, all right, they fell, they created the Nephilim, yada yada, and so it's like, why does he hate human beings so much? Why would you hold a grudge for that long? And then not just holding a grudge, but constantly doing things to humankind to subvert, destroy it because you hate it so much. Imagine hanging out with somebody who just hated one thing forever. And it's like, I get if you hate it for a year, but like, now you still hate it, and you're like, this guy's kind of corny to hang around. These are the people that
not only that,
this is the guy you're worshiping. Like,
but the more you subvert, the more God's plan still rolls out.
yeah.
You know, and it's like there's no way to turn. Every time you do a thing, you think you've gained an edge. You're only progressing the story that God has written. You know, and yeah, it's
You're
in this
following
perpetual.
the guy. He's eternally stepping on a rake. That's really what's happening. It looks cool to us. Like, he can offer you all the glitz and glam, but this is kind of like, you know, like the Matrix with the guy eating the steak. It's like, that's fake steak, man. But
Yeah.
he's just constantly stepping on the rake, and you're like, that's my leader. That's
Yes.
you. It's 'cause you're drinking bull urine.
I love that, guys, because, you know, every time, you know, a warrior in the faith dies, there's always this speculation. They were murdered. They were taken out. The occult got them, you know, and there was all that speculation when Russ Dizdar died, and all that kind of stuff. And this is the crappy part about being on Satan's side. If it says in scripture, and it does, that before we're born, God has marked out all the days of our life, and he knows exactly how many of them we will have, and we won't add one day to it, and we won't take one day away from it. He chooses that day. So even if an occultist hates you and stalks you and ends up murdering you, they were complicit in fulfilling the will of God. So you're in your very act of rebellion. I go to glory. I escape this prison planet. Thank you. And then you have to live the rest of your life knowing that what you really did there, you didn't kill me. You actually inadvertently worshiped God by fulfilling his will on his behalf. You were a tool for him. And so you really can't win if you're on that side of things. And I love what you just brought out about how even as this, guy is stepping on the rakes, it's always, it's like a choose your own adventure where it's always going to go to the will of God. I mean, even when Satan managed to put him on a cross and snuff his life out, Jesus comes back from the grave, goes down to Tartarus, looks Azazel right in the eye, punches him in the throat, takes the keys to sin and death, and wins. So it's like all they can do is keep meandering into these dead ends.
What they do is they fulfill prophecy.
Yes,
That's all they can do. Even, I was just thinking about just the very beginning. If you think about it, right? God created the heavens, earth, then he created man, and then now they're chilling in the Garden of Eden for who knows how long. And, Satan sneaks in. Yeah. And it's like you started the Bible, right? Well, you started at least after the creation, like the first couple verses. That was you. You didn't want that to happen because in the end, when you not rejected God, but when you rebelled against God and fell down to the earth, you knew how it ended right there. They all knew, all the fallen, and you still started this thing up. God had human beings inside of the Garden of Eden, and you still started this thing up, your own demise. It's kind of incredible to think of. Every step of the way is just another rake that you're stepping on. It's incredible.
So Gary Wayne actually has a super cool take on this. I love the way he worded it. One time I had asked him kind of the same thing, like, what's this moron thinking? Like, I mean, how many times does he have to be duped? Oh my gosh. And I love the way he explained this. I hope I don't butcher this. He said that the reason why Satan moves for the devil, whatever you want to call him, but it's our general understanding that it's this guy here on planet Earth who's kind of got the scepter of the kingdom temporarily, and he's wreaking as much havoc as he can, and he's got a bunch of human trolls doing his work, right? That guy, So whatever name you call it, he should have been put in the abyss with all of the other angels that rebelled. He should be down there with the Watchers from Hermon and all that. So what Gary said was that Satan took a plea bargain.
Ooh.
And what Jehovah told Satan was, okay, you can avoid the jail sentence, but the downside of it is you are inadvertently going to be the catalyst for basically proving to the entire world that there's a war going on and you're basically losing it, right? So you get your life for a while, you get a little bit more freedom, and you can vicariously live out pleasures, and you can do your darndest, and you're not stuck down there in the abyss with your buddies. So you get a little bit more freedom, you get a little bit more time, but what you're actually going to do is provide me with millions and millions and millions of opportunity to show my glory and my power and my authority over you. And Satan took the plea bargain, and he's vicariously enjoying himself and wreaking a lot of havoc. But what he's doing for those who have eyes to see, because Satan always makes it look like he's the one winning, right? The Christians are the ones getting martyred. We're the fools. We're the dummies. And they're the ones getting more wealth and more power and everything. So it really looks like they're winning. But for those with eyes to see, every generation sees this coming down, this theophany, in Moses's generation, Ezekiel's generation, Jeremiah's generation, the Apostle Paul's generation. In every generation, there was this sort of like Mount Carmel showdown, whether it was the Red Sea or it was Mount Carmel or it was the cross. It seems like every generation gets this opportunity to see this theophany where God comes down in some way and proves beyond a shadow of a doubt to that generation that he is the one ultimately that is going to carry the scepter of planet Earth. And one of the things that I am longing for is, before I die or before it's the end. I love the Psalm. I want to say it's Psalm 18, but don't quote me on it, where the psalmist is saying, God, bend the heaven like a bow, stretch heaven down like a bow until it hits earth. Come down in all of your glory and reveal yourself. And, I hope that I live to see the day where Christ comes down and there's another showdown. Where's our generation's showdown? When are we going to get our showdown? Because it looks now from everything going on like the enemy is really winning. He's wreaking absolute destruction in our youth. Molech is alive and well. Baal is alive and well. Queen of Heaven alive and well, all doing the same thing that they've been doing for thousands and thousands of years. The sacrifice of children and the twisting of the identity of women and men and all this stuff. It's what they've been doing since the beginning of time. And there's always a point where God rolls up his sleeves and says, okay, you know what? I'm going to go down. I'm going to make an appearance, and then the whole world is in awe of the sea splitting or the sacrifice being burned up or the guy raising from the dead. And I do believe that every generation, and I know that there's a difference of opinion on what a generation is, depending on what verse you're reading and things, but everybody's talking about the end of the world now and the end times. And what I want even more than that right now is I want our generation's showdown. These Nephilim, these elite people that are running the world and walking around in their hubris. And I would just love for our generation to see that throat punch, not only because we have justice running through our veins, because we were created to long for justice and righteousness, but I long for our generation to get a taste on their tongue of the power and the glory and the superiority and the superior coolness of our God. He's gotten a bad rap. He looks like the nerd. He looks like the bore. All he has for his people is we're going to sit on a cloud with a harp and all this nonsense, right? And hell's where the big party's at. What a joke. And I just don't know, because of the state of insipid preaching these days, how is the younger generations that are alive now going to get a taste for the glory and the superiority of Jesus Christ if no one is going to show it to them, no one's going to teach them about it? They're going to have to witness it for themselves. And here's where the enemy is really playing Russian roulette. You can take this further and further and further, and you can make this world darker and darker and darker. But if you push this to a place where the only way that God can reset the balances and get order is to come down here himself, it's what he's going to do. It's going to be another Babel situation. It's going to be another Mount Carmel situation. It's going to be another Red Sea situation. It's going to be another Calvary situation. So instead of looking at it like it's getting darker and darker and darker and darker, this is the end. There's a point where when it gets completely taken out of the hands of man to fix the situation, there is a point, I think, where Christ himself is going to roll up his sleeves in some way and have a showdown. And
Do you think it's the last one? I completely agree, and I tell my mom this all the time. She's like, "This is the end of days," and I was like, "Our intro song's "End of Days," and it could be, but I'm like, it could also get way worse than this. Like what you're reading in Revelation could be really horrible. This could be mild, and this could be one of those bounce backs that you're talking about.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm not sure.
I mean, they capital T, right? They're even telling us that it's a reset, right? That they're not even planning on ending it. Even the people that want
who,
it.
Though?
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. They don't want the end. You guys, they want to avoid the end as long as possible because the end means judgment for them. So they're not looking to start Armageddon. that's the last thing that they want. They want to keep resetting it. And as soon as people figure out the plan, then let's reset this and put them back into ignorance. If all of the distractions and the pleasures like don't keep them from thwarting our plan, then we just got to reset all this. They're even talking about a reset. So here's what I think about.
It makes you think, how many times have we been here? Like, I don't know if you follow Graham Hancock, but he's like, if we are a species with amnesia, how many times have we been right up to it?
Yes.
And they're like, not yet.
Yes. Yes. Well, in fact, I'll throw this at you, and I'm just musing. I'm just wildly speculating because it's fun. Okay, this isn't dogma. I haven't.
That's what we do here. That's what we do here.
All right,
I speculate wildly.
That's right. That's what I'm doing. I haven't taken a Sharpie marker and put this in the back of my Bible yet, guys. But God doesn't mince words. He chooses words very carefully, and He's not melodramatic, and He's not, if He says something, we have to really weigh carefully every word. And maybe because I'm the English major and the word nerd, I vocabulary and grammar in scripture is very revealing to me. And when the rainbow went in the sky after the flood and the Noahic covenant was put into place, one of the things being, I will never flood the earth again. I will never send a rain that destroys the whole earth again. Okay. Wild speculation here. If let's say let's say you're in a relationship and you cheat on the girl, and it happened one time, and you just kissed another girl. It wasn't even something severe, right? To say, I will never, ever, ever, ever do it again. I promise, I won't do it again. I won't do it again. Don't leave. That's usually the way someone responds when they're a serial cheater and they've done it so many times that the person's not really going to believe them anymore, right? What's interesting to me about this is it seems like an overreaction. The world gets flooded. Is it really going to be in the mind of man? Like, oh, I wonder how long before this happens a second time. Like, would you really think that this geological phenomenon that happened one time in a supernatural way is going to, oh crap, it's going to happen again, to the point where God has to
be addressed.
Yeah, let's address this. I'm going to put a rainbow in the sky, and I swear to you, I'm never, ever, ever going to do this again. Like, to me, that seems like an overreaction. It would seem to me that would be something that you would tell someone who'd lived through maybe 7 or 8 of these. Like Dad and Grandpa and Great Grandpa all talked about, this flood coming. And the fact that he says, I'm never going to do this again, and the next time I come, it's going to be fire. I'm not making this dogmatic or theological. I'm not going into the Greek and the Hebrew. I'm just saying that it's a possibility that flood was one of many destructions. And in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. The word beginning there is the beginning of our experience here on this planet. Once everything was reset and he brought order out of all of this darkness and the tohu bohu. If you study Michael Lake and other people that talk about the tohu bohu, it seems to be a reforming of something that was destroyed. God is a God of order, not of chaos. And so if the earth in its unformed state is described as chaos, well, God didn't create that. He doesn't make chaos. And this was before the fall of man. This was before sin. So why is the earth in darkness and chaos? How did that happen? So it's just by putting together clues like that and in contrasting it with the character and nature of God that we know to be true, that looks to me like I think there might be like a giant easy button in the sky that gets pushed a few times, and sometimes it's we see small microcosms of it. We see just Sodom and Gomorrah getting destroyed, or we see, every country eventually gets wiped off the map. There is no longer a Mongolian empire. Where are the Assyrians? Where are the Akkadians? Where are the Girgashites? Where are all of these people? And so, kind of going back to this question about the end times, Christians tend to automatically assume that when things get really bad, it's the end of the world. But if you go back into the world history that we remember, at some point, every world power that goes corrupt and rebels against God is defeated and it's wiped off the map. And sometimes the country still exists, but their power is gone. I don't think we're going to see Egypt rise to world domination again. Probably not going to see Rome rise in its first incursion the same way, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like the word and the power and the plan of God is like an anvil, right? So you've got this blacksmith. Like, let's say God's the blacksmith. He's got his war hammer. It even says in Jeremiah, you are my war hammer. Judah is the war hammer that I am going to use to crush Babylon. They're going to bring you into captivity, but I'm going to use their sin in mistreating you. I'm going to pick Judah back up like a war hammer and crush them. So you think of God like this blacksmith with this huge anvil, and he's got this war hammer, and he puts nation after nation after nation on this anvil of time. And when his purpose for them, for judging his people, when their purpose is over, he slams that hammer and they are crushed to powder. They are no more. And so why America doesn't think that they could be one in a very, 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 very long line of rebellious nations who have turned their back on the covenant and who have rebelled against God, why they think it has to be the end of the world instead of them just getting their turn on that anvil and losing their power because they abused it and they rejected him. So that's kind of where it's
because we're the biggest one yet. I mean, as far as like throughout history, I mean, as these empires get as time goes on, these empires get larger in size. I'm sure our population of 350 million, they say there's probably like who knows how many people are here. In comparison to Rome, ancient Rome, which was a marvel at the time, it makes it look like, a tent.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is going to be a fantastical crash when the hammer comes down, and people are going to be like, I've never seen anything like that. And you'd be right. But it doesn't mean that there can't be another crazier thing that happens. But we're living in the end times of America. I feel like that is safe to say.
Exactly. Absolutely. Unless there's some sort of revival, but even for the Pollyannas out there who are like, no, there's going to be a revival. He's going to come down like in the days of Nimrod, and he's going to confuse the languages, and we're going to get back on track here. And it's possible he could be the one with the reset button, but what I think a lot of people don't realize, but it's all over in scripture, that usually that kind of revival does come through dispersion or persecution. It doesn't just get handed to us on a silver platter like, oh, you guys are so special. I can't believe the rich Americans, lost their good bread, and I'm going to restore their. Here's your water without fluoride, and here's your bread without glyphosates. And I was just reading today in Ezekiel. I mean, this goes all the way back to when they were in Babylon, and one of the prophecies that's put in Ezekiel's mouth is that you'll weigh out your bread and eat it in terror, and you'll weigh out your water and drink it in terror. And we can talk all day long as conspiracy theorists about how the evil Bill Gateses of the world and the Elon Musks and all this, how they're poisoning our crops, and they ruined our soil, and they're poisoning our bread, and they're putting fluoride in our water, and it's all directed at them. And yet we see in numerous times in scripture that when Israel and Judah rebelled against God and they fell out of covenant with him, that he put tyrants in charge of them, and he put governments in charge of them that ruled with an iron fist. And there were times of starvation, and there were times where they ate their bread with toil. And I don't think that this food crisis we're facing right now in America is necessarily just really evil people who want to depopulate us. I think it's part of it. I absolutely think that that's what they're doing. But why don't we ever reflect in the mirror as a church and say, this is actually one of the first things that used to happen to Israel and Judah when they were out of covenant, is God would spoil their food and water reserves.
This is actually this is what Owen Benjamin says, right? You get the government you deserve.
Yes.
And this is obviously on a much higher spiritual scale. It's
spiritual government. You get the
right,
devil.
but I mean, we get what it is that we deserve. So all, and you can spread that, I'm sure, across multiple facets that aren't just governments and food shortages.
Yes.
The Federal Reserve is something that I'm
Every
very
time
sure
we have a government that is basically trying to rape your kids, and I'm kind of like, you deserve it. You put them in a dress, right? like you're asking for this. You're constantly. I said the idea of consent. Yeah, the idea of consent is something we do all day long, every single day. I make the choice every single time I answer my kid or pick up the phone or do whatever, how I'm going to approach that.
Yeah,
that's a consent based. Every single thing that I do. So if I'm constantly consenting towards like negative things, then that's what I've chosen.
Yeah.
I did that myself. I have to accept that. And me and Dave actually had a phone conversation about like accepting, like if we messed up, like I did that. And now,
right,
because I chose that, but I can choose other things. I can choose what, like more godly things, pointing towards God.
Yeah.
And that, which is the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've been contemplating recently in the last year or two, and there's tension here. Believe me, there's tension here. It says in the Torah that if we keep the covenant, the diseases of Egypt will not fall on us. Okay. Now you can just write that off, that the Torah is for the Jews only and we've got nothing to glean there. And then you're off the hook and you don't have to worry about it. And there's no tension. But for me, there's tension, because when you look at this influx of autoimmune diseases, I mean, they're running out of space in their books, coming up with new names for all this stuff that's going on with our digestive systems and our, all this stuff. And I look at it like, if I'm following in my fallen state to the best of my ability, everything that I believe is, I'm not just acting like a Christian, like I go to church, I'm in covenant with him. I'm following his commands. I'm living a pure life and I am seeking him and I'm pursuing him with my whole heart. I shouldn't have an autoimmune disease that's caused by food that my body can't digest, that's being poisoned by Babylon, right? Like there's tension there. If I'm keeping the covenant and the disease of Egypt has fallen on me, well, then maybe I'm not keeping the covenant because God's faithful. And so there's tension there with me. Like, why are so many God-fearing people suffering these diseases that are the result of food and medical solutions that are being foisted upon them? And so I look at,
if it was obvious, right? If it was obvious, like, oh, if I do X, then I get this, then I am healthy. If I choose God, then I am healthy. That's an obvious choice, and it's almost like kicking the door in, right?
Yeah.
You have to knock.
Yeah.
So
you're making decisions, you're making choices based off of your own well-being and not the love of God. You're not choosing the love of God. You're choosing self-preservation. And
it's also like, it's kind of like one of my friends, the guy Dave Smith, he had a kid. His son was very sick, and he went from atheist. I was listening to a show, from atheist all the way to now believing in God and praying to God. Had his daughter. He said, "Oh, there is a God." Had his son. His son had heart issues, had a heart surgery, and he said, "I asked God." He doesn't do this. Said, "I asked God, if you pull him through this, then like you're my guy."
Yeah.
And it's been a couple of years now, and I look at him. He's a really big name, he's on Fox News and stuff, doesn't shy away from that there is a God. You know, like telling people about things like that first. And I'm like, good on you, because some people think that you could just make a deal with God, like, I'll do this, but you got your fingers crossed. It's like, doesn't work that way, man. I mean,
exactly. It's kind of like the person who tithes because they think they're going to get rich, right? you know, the motives matter. And so for those places in scripture where there is tension, I heard a pastor recently say that sometimes when things don't make sense in our life, it's because a greater mystery is at play. And I love that, because sometimes it is, you know, hey, what's even better than healing a sick child? Healing a sick child in the timing that leads dad to Jesus Christ, right? So there's other things that are having to get swept up into this before he just comes and answers. But yeah, it's tough. And I think that as believers, we have to recognize, like, okay, we have to watch our back, and there's stuff out there that we shouldn't be eating, and there's maybe some supplements we need to be taking, and maybe I should get some exercise today. But I also know that if I seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, all these other things are going to be added to me as well. Maybe not in my timing or in my way, but it's really difficult trying to figure out how to live in Babylon when we have nowhere to flee. You know, we don't have some wilderness we can go out to and start our own nation, you know, our own little theocracy. We are stuck snap in the middle of Babylon. And what is it going to look like for us to live amongst them but not be them?
I would say that we, and not that we should take solace in this and stop being proactive, but are up against, you know, I've said it before in the way of conspiracy theories, but it goes well beyond that. When it comes to conspiracies, we're up against the most well-oiled, the most extravagant, the most monumental propaganda machine that certainly has ever existed in the history of human beings. I would imagine. I mean, unless Atlantis or something had something more, superior to what we're being subjected to. But beyond that, the temptations are insane, because it seems like avenues for sin are so readily available and propositioning you on a constant basis. And then your inability, like Vicki, you just alluded to detach from this system is, I mean, it's tremendous. It can't be understated. My wife was listening to something on the internet just yesterday, a man who was, you know, really just like desperate. He's being recorded by someone who sees that he's homeless, and he's so confused. It was almost like you took this man from like 100 years ago and dropped him today, because he's speaking from such a place of confusion and such a place of like betrayal, where he's saying, like, I didn't want to use the state's electricity. I didn't want to worry about the water and irrigation system. I was collecting rainwater. I was self-sustaining, and I was off the grid, and I didn't want anything to do with anyone. And I have been in that spot, in that house for 50 years, and they removed me from my own home because I wasn't allowed to not be on their the state's water or the township's water. I wasn't allowed to collect rainwater. Somehow collecting rainwater is illegal. I wasn't allowed to turn off my breaker during the day. Oh, no, this was a different guy. This guy was using candlelight. A separate story of a woman who would turn her breaker off while she was at work at her 9 to 5. So from those hours of the day, her breaker box is off because no one's home, no one's using electricity. Somehow that was an issue, and she had to contest with the state about that. And it's to the point now where for a long time there was this concept of going off grid, and it feels as though the further we get into the future, the less of a reality that is, because even people who are doing simple things like having rainwater collection stations, or Top, like you, having chickens, it's like, well, when does that become a problem? Yeah. When does the state decide that that's no longer allowed? And it's just, I think that maybe it's okay every once in a while to focus in on the tremendous obstacles. And even that will make you feel like maybe we are in the end of days, because you can feel yourself getting worked into a corner culturally, societally, functionally speaking. You are worked into a corner with various oppressors saying that you need to adhere to this or you need to behave like that. Where certainly 100 years ago, that was not the case. You could go and disappear into the forest and
Yeah, just jump the
start a
wall of your
compound.
town, your city, and
That's
then
it.
you're gone. It's not like
Not
that anymore,
anymore,
dude.
though.
It's
No.
nowhere to run. Nowhere to run. Well,
Kind
nowhere.
of depressing.
Yeah, it is. But that's
No,
why.
I don't look at that as depressing, though. I do look at that as like, um, maybe, and this is going to sound crazy, maybe we are this blessed generation that, sure, the things that are stacked up against us are monumental, but maybe that also speaks to the opportunities that we have, not only to align ourselves with God, but to potentially see something. Vicki, you're talking about, when does our generation get to see a thing? And here on Nephilim Death Squad, we believe that things will be as the days of Noah, and it's going to be a matter of time. And I think from a purely spiritual entity standpoint, these things are all on an uptick from where I'm sitting. Now, maybe you could say, hey, this is because we have the internet. We've had the internet for a while. I feel as though we are seeing more encounters, more unexplainable, videos. I'm having experiences myself. I think the stories, the testimony, the paranormal, supernatural testimony comes faster and faster these days. And it's one of those things where you have to weigh. Is it because people like, you or L.A. Marzulli or Gary Wayne have come along and made these conversations acceptable to be had? Or did the levee break? Did the dam break because the waters got so immense, these stories, these testimonies built up to such a degree that they needed an outlet? And now this is what's happening. I subscribe to the latter. I feel as though we are in this time where people are having more and more unexplainable experiences. And I feel as though we're going to hit a place at some point where we almost hit a critical mass. And I think that across all spectrums, conspiracy, supernatural, whatever it may be, people are disenfranchised with politics, which is what allows also a show like this to exist, where we have a conspiracy theory element, because people are looking for alternative answers, because politics has failed them in such a miserable way. And the failure is on such magnificent display that people are becoming disenfranchised, or disenchanted rather, with that display. And they go, no. What they're telling us, it isn't lining up anymore. And so they're seeking alternative sources of information. But then on the supernatural front, you have these things that, even Bigfoot and people that look into Bigfoot have turned a corner where the respect for it, at least from where I'm sitting, I go, yeah, there's something to this gigantic, hairy Nephilim offspring, in the forest that may be interdimensional, that may be portal hopping. And so I think that you certainly can't put that back in the box. You're not going to gain the public's trust back in the political apparatus. You're not going to dial down all the supernatural experience, because the conversation's only getting louder and louder. So where does this all go? If I'm judging things correctly, which, I'm basically psychotic, so I could very well not be judging them correctly. But I think that this is hitting a crescendo, and maybe we will see that big, affirming moment within our generation where, who knows, maybe we'll see more than we bargained for. That's kind of how I feel from where I'm sitting.
Yeah. Well, as they escalate in power, so will the kingdom of God. And I do think that we will, in those times, as the times call for it, I think we will also see a resurgence of the anointing of healing the sick and raising the dead. And I think we're going to see that too. The weapons that we're given, as the battle increases, our arsenal will as well. And one of the Psalms that I absolutely think is eschatological, and I haven't, studied this, so I don't know if a scholar would agree with me, but Psalm 27 really seems eschatological to me, because we have in the opening verses The psalmist being encamped around by an army who wants to besiege him and devour his flesh. So we're seeing now the zombie apocalypse kind of thing. Armies of cannibals are surrounding me to eat me. These are zombies. This isn't just guys with guns, right? This is like a zombie apocalypse being described.
Yeah, the guy in well, I mean, geez, we just got this guy in Haiti. They're literally threatening us. Whether or not you want to say that that's media propaganda, that is the theme that's being dangled over our heads right now. Hey, they're coming and they're gonna eat you.
Yeah, right.
Whoa.
Exactly. What's awesome about Psalm 27 as it escalates, and he's like, I will not fear. I will not be afraid. Right. So he's resolving not to fear man. He's obeying the command found in Matthew. Do not be afraid of those who fear the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. So he's applying the scripture. I refuse to be afraid of you, even though you want to eat me. Then he goes to worship. One thing I ask of the Lord, this is what I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. So he is looking towards his future hope, because what did Christ do before he suffered his death? It was the joy set before him that empowered him to enable that trial. And so now the psalmist is doing that. One thing I ask of the Lord, and he's envisioning eternity, and rather be a doorkeeper at that temple than down here on this planet. But then what's interesting to me is it says that we're going to be raised, we're going to be set high upon a rock. We're going to be exalted above the enemies and the armies that have surrounded us. And then it says that we will be hidden in his tabernacle. So let's take this to a supernatural, eschatological, dimensional level. What if this isn't just a poet saying, the end is going to come, they're going to kill me, I'm going to endure it because I have a future hope, and then once I'm dead, I'll make it to heaven? I don't think that's what it's saying. What I think it's saying is, when the crap hits the fan and the zombie apocalypse hits, it is going to be a situation where if I muster up my courage and I don't fear man, and because of the joy set before me, I go into the fray of this battle, that maybe I will be one of those people that is dimensionally hidden when the seals are broken. And the reason why I will not have to fear my enemies is because I will be dimensionally unavailable for them to touch. And it's just wild speculation. You can talk about the rapture, and you can talk about being sucked out of here by the heavenly Hoover before anything bad happens to you. And because, God forbid an American suffer. But maybe what it's saying is that once we get ready to break those seals and the wrath of God is poured out, the bowls of wrath come out. And I think this is where Psalm 91 comes into play. And hat tip to Bo Kennedy. He's the one that told me this. The 1,000 that fall at my side and 10,000 at my right hand, but it will not come near me. No harm will befall me. No plague will come near my tent. That the 1,000 falling at our side and the 10,000 falling at our right hand, it's not the Antichrist and the beast and the dragon coming and killing believers. Those are the bowls of wrath. And it is the rebellious ones, and it's the people that don't belong to the kingdom of heaven that are getting taken out at our side, because the bowls of wrath are coming. It's the wrath of God that is causing 1,000 to fall and 10,000 to fall. And the reason why it's not coming near me is because I'm not under wrath. And maybe somehow I'm still on earth persevering till the end through that. And the rapture isn't a relocation so much as a dimensional veil that I'm behind, that their technology can't see behind. It's a cloaking device of some kind. And I'm just speculating, guys. I'm not saying this is the fact.
I love that.
But it's where my mind goes when I read Psalm 27. And because I love that psalm, I don't look at the end times with fear. I'm like, oh man, this is going to oh, I can't wait to see this, man. I'm going to be right there going like this at them, and they're not even going to be able to see me. It is like,
Number one, I love that that entire idea. That's a great idea, and I share that sentiment for some reason. Where it's like, you know, people say it's like a black pill, right? Like, oh, we're coming up on the end times, and they go, "How could you say that?" That's so, and I'm like, I don't know how to necessarily put it in words, but I love it. I don't know how to say that, like, but I'm like, yes, dude. Like, I have been like that since I was a child. Like, I was like number one, I always had this idea that like we were gonna face some sort of adversity, even when I was a child and I couldn't articulate what it was. I was just like, yeah, dude, that's just gonna be the world. We're just gonna live. We're just
It
gonna live
doesn't
in crazy
sound-
times. And
It doesn't sound as crazy as like you'll see like other grown men like that have kids. They'll get excited for a new Marvel movie or something. It's like that's what you're excited. You're excited about that hero's journey, but not the actual hero's journey. That's
yes,
like
not the
Yeah.
real
damn
one.
cool.
right. Well, and
Terrifying.
what I
cool.
love about it too is I do think that a lot of the things that the demonic world, you know, these disembodied spirits, I think a lot of what they're using as tools to torment us, like these paranormal things and whatever, I have a hunch that maybe the terror that they're inflicting on us is the terror that's going to be inflicted on them. So they're like, how do you like it? You're going to experience this if we have to. Because what I like about that theory of Psalm 27, where we're being dimensionally hidden, is it is sort of the reverse of sleep paralysis. And it's like when you're in sleep paralysis, you can't move. You don't know what's going on. You're completely at their mercy, frozen in time while they just torment you, and you're just trapped there. And if it's the opposite in the end times, where we know they're all out killing each other. Like, I mean, when Apollyon gets let out for 5 months, he's killing his own flock. He's not killing those who belong to Jesus. He's decimating his own constituents, you know? And so maybe it's like this reverse of the torment that we experience, where now you're frozen. You can't touch me. You're the one that's paralyzed. We're the ones tormenting you. We're right here in front of you. But because you're in some sort of weird dimensional dream state, you're trying, you know, like in sleep paralysis where you're trying to move and you can barely get your hand to move forward and you can't scream. They're going to be in that spot. And we're going to be the ones clear-headed and sober-minded and awake and lucid and holding all the cards. And so I do wonder if there is some sort of a foreshadowing in people that are experiencing these sleep paralysis experiences. Are you getting a little taste of what they are going to get when the bowls of wrath pour out on them? Are you trying to give us a little taste of that because you're bitter?
There's something I want to address about what you said earlier. Actually, Top, you go ahead.
I was gonna say it kind of follows like Hollywood or whatever we see now in our entertainment or even our comedy. It's just like old stuff rehashed. Like they just can't remake anything good, so they just kind of use something else that you've seen. You're like, get some creativity. This is boring.
Yeah, they're at the end of the barrel.
So, all right, there's two things I want to say. Well, I'd like to go back and address something you said earlier, Vicki. But first, I would like to mention that I've actually had 2 bouts of sleep paralysis relatively recently within the past month, where there was a long lapse where I didn't have it for a while. And even the state that I'm in, where like one of them, I didn't even really make it to like a waking experience of sleep paralysis. Entrapped in a dream where I knew that I was experiencing it. Even in that dream, I was able to call out to Christ and got out of it. Like, I mean, and then there was something really weird that happened because I remember a being made of light. Like it looked like a man whose body was made of light. And I wasn't lucid. So this wasn't a decision that I made. But I know that I definitely mocked this thing. Like after I got out of it through the name of Christ, I was then like, oh, in your face. Like I remember doing that. And then very recently I had the same thing happen again with
what are you doing, man?
I was like, in hindsight, I was like, damn, dude, I wonder who that
embarrassed.
was.
I'm like, oh, my co-host mocked it. You mocked the demon probably, but still, I'm like, come on, man, have some more couth.
And definitely a little bit of class would have behooved me. I could have been better about that. I could have been like, not today. But instead I was like, in your face, sucker. So, and then I have this experience again where I'm laying next to my wife, and I remember, because a lot of times when you're paralyzed, you'll try to reach out to somebody to like help snap you out of it. And so I'm trying to get to my wife, and I'm actually caught in a loop where I think I'm getting there very slowly, like molasses. And then like in reality, in hindsight, I was not even close. Like I don't even think I was moving at all. And so, but during this exhaustive thing, once again, I call out to Christ, and like, boom, my arm's free within seconds. And then I'm up and I'm like, man, that kind of sucked. But like, thank you, Jesus. But to go back to what you were saying earlier, and it connects to what we're talking about right now, as all these things do, this idea that we may have a point in time where we're going to look at the mechanisms by which these things torment us, and even these things themselves, and be underwhelmed and just like almost like embarrassed and ashamed for them. Like, look at this, is the thing that I've been subjected to. And these sleep paralysis experiences always follow sort of a blueprint, right?
I kind of already am. Aren't you? I mean, like the things that are tormenting us are doing, and I'm sorry for the vulgar language here, but they're doing like, one of the things they always do is like butt sex. And I'm just like, that's just gross, dude. I don't even care anymore.
Gross. Yeah.
Poop comes out of there. Like, but you always do that. It's like, ugh. Like I just have a hard time. I respect that they, them can really oppress me. I respect that they can, but I just don't have respect for them. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's where I'm at.
It's like, hey, children. If a child is playing with like dog poo, I'm gonna go, hey, don't do that. You guys should know better. You've been around for a while. You guys should know better, all right?
That's guy poo. Stop that.
So we have this sort of system that it follows, right? Where it's like you wake up, you're paralyzed. There's sometimes the presence of a shadow entity. There's sometimes the presence of a bright white light, like this inexplicably bright light. There's the sensation of sort of an electrocution sensation, maybe a really intense vibration sensation. And also, in some cases, there's a levitation experience as well, where you feel like you're coming up out of your... And what I'm realizing, and I think we talked about this, Vicki, on the episode that we did on the Ravens Watch, but I'm starting to realize there's probably more elements that fit this bill, possibly the light. But when it comes to the vibration, there are animals, for example, that can emit a very low vibrational frequency that will induce terror, and oftentimes in their prey, paralysis. So alligators will emit this unbelievable, or big cats will do this. And if they have a small prey animal with them, it'll actually just lay down and it'll just stop and take it. And scientists have discovered,
the guy from Cryptids of the Corn told us, like, I think it's a shrimp, and it creates this vortex of vibration that basically explodes the other fish. Like, it has this power to it.
Is it the mantis? Are you talking about the mantis, the pistol shrimp, I think it's called, where it can actually snap its little fist and create this little explosion? But like, there are all these examples within the animal kingdom of them manipulating frequencies to do one thing or another. And they had studies conducted where it was discovered certain frequencies can actually emit or create certain emotional states. So like depression, for example, could be, and certainly one of those would be fear, right? Maybe fear to the state of paralysis. And even to go a step further, I think this was discussed by Justin of Cryptids of the Corn with us, which I thought this was incredibly fascinating. There was a cliff formation, a natural rock formation, where there was a disproportionate amount of suicides there. Wasn't it even happening to animals? Animals were jumping off this cliff and dying.
Like Suicide Cove or something like that.
Yeah, and it was happening to people in droves, to people who had no suicidal tendencies. And what they discovered was the formation of the rocks basically were receiving and reverberating in such a way that it was emitting a frequency that was creating like something akin to like high level depression. And so they actually had to destroy a section of the cove in order to get this to stop happening, because I guess this natural rock formation was acting as a tuning fork and it was amplifying this frequency and it was causing people to kill themselves. So I say all that to say that a time will probably come where we realize that these things that are visiting us in the night, number one, they're incredibly weak, right? They're taking these bio suits. People often, and I know I'm going on a tangent here, but people will often discuss this, and my aunt was one of them. She was schizophrenic, but she would have really interesting attributes that she would describe when encountering an entity. One of them would be this sulfuric smell, this rotting smell.
Mm-hmm.
It's come to my attention because of the works of people like Karen Wilson. It's their butthole. They're always doing so. No,
Karen Wilson, like butthole all day long. That's hard.
It's because that's what they do.
That's what they.
It's unbelievable. So no, what's happening here is that they have engineered these small husks, right? These grays, and they are not always inhabited. From what I'm gathering, it seems like these things aren't always hosted, or rather, they aren't always being filled by some sort of spirit. It's kind of like a suit that these disembodied spirits of the Nephilim put on, or the Fallen, where they're allowed to traverse and allowed to enter this realm through this little biological entity that they've created. But when they're not filling them, they're just kind of sitting around like rotting. And they don't really care about Old Spice. They're not washing these things. So when they show up, they smell like rotting, decaying flesh, right? So these things, there's a technology aspect to this. They're permeating penetrating our realm and coming into our realm by means of technology, because otherwise they can't show up here in a physical form. This is at least my ideas. And I this may sound, probably not, to the audience, this probably sounds just fine. So they're coming here by technological means, and they are more than likely inducing these states of fear, these episodes of paralysis, feelings of helplessness via some form of technology. And that is why there is a formula. Sometimes when people wake up during these experiences, these things are like, oh shit, like, stop, go back.
He's
up.
No. He's up. Yeah.
Go back, get him with the thing. Like, they don't like that. There's a thing. They have a formula that works out for them. They're like, step 1, zap them with the shit. Step 2, make them see the bright light. I don't know what the bright light does. Step 3,
underpants. Whatever.
Do the butt thing every time. Every time. This is a formula that they execute by way of some form of technology. And so I think, yeah, Vicki, you're probably right. One day we're going to look at their vibrational gun and be like, are you kidding me? Like, this is what you've been.
Yeah.
And when we turn the lights on them, we're going to be like, that stinky little rotting mound of flesh is causing all this havoc in my life. Like, they are in that way pathetic. And they have to move cloak and dagger, because if we saw them for what they truly are, we would almost, laugh at them. But they have limited means by which they can affect us, and the means are honestly probably pretty pathetic. And I hope that we see that one day.
And what Vicki said is, that's the greatest thing. The only thing, not separating us from them, but I guess in a word, would be the technology that it seems that they're using. It's not like Jesus, when Jesus did his miracles, he did his miracles. It seems like when Satanists do, or these demonic entities do these things, there is a passed down technology that they're using. That for at least that's what I feel like more and more as I look into this stuff. So it's not even of their own power. It's just kind of like, we don't have that stuff that they're using, and that's really it. So like, once
just suppressed technology. It's like stuff that we used to have. That's why Nikola Tesla says, if you want to understand the world, you understand it in frequency, harmonics, and vibrations, or something like that. And it's like, these are probably things we had at one point. They work really well, but through some backdoor thing, like in the same way that Reagan makes a deal, and it's like, hey, you can take X amount of human beings for, some tech or whatever. There probably was a deal where it's like the general public gets cut off from this. And this technology is exclusively for them. And whatever deals they have cut out. But, when you start to paint that picture, it's almost like it's pathetic. And I just want to shout out to Z-Man Awesome, who said part of their torment is to smell like butthole for the rest of eternity. Just like they deserve.
That's
just like they deserve.
That's right.
For the rest of eternity.
We should start a GoFundMe and get a dry cleaner set up for these guys. Get those suits clean, man.
You're gonna have to burn those clothes, man. That's like them.
It makes sense, right? Because when they take us, there are often times where like people will wake up and they'll be freaking out, and like these entities are like, "The hell are you? What's the problem here? Like you consented to this. It's everything's all good. What I don't understand. Go back to sleep. Go back to sleep."
You got
They're
a business
confused.
idea,
So like,
David. This is how we
what's
get in
that?
front of it. I always like whenever you see a tragedy, it's like get in front of it and like somehow capitalize on it. So
Profit,
we're gonna
yeah.
open up. Yeah, it'll be like a demon power washing company where like after this is like they're like, oh, they're walking among us. They're like, but still every day like they come in and we just power wash them down and take their demonic money. This is how we.
They won't
this is how we
understand it
win.
though, because they don't get it. They're like, I don't. Yeah, I smell it, but like, so
like,
what?
it's you.
Like, I don't
It's
understand. What's
you.
the problem? Yeah, well, you don't like that? I don't get it. There's a lot of like what I think is really fascinating is my contention. These things are the Nephilim and the Fallen, and the same ancient adversaries since the dawn of time, and they have such a level of confusion about human emotion that when humans like object to this, you always get these stories of like they're like, why are you freaking out? And it's like you haven't you there. I understand it now. When it's like you thought that you were gonna rebel against God, and even though you know how the story ends, you're gonna continue to do this, and it's like, oh, they don't learn very fast. They're incredibly dense. It's been hundreds and hundreds of years, and they're like, why don't you like this? Why are you freaking out? It's like,
Why
because you
don't you like
kidnapped
this?
me from my bedroom
Right.
with vibrational
Right.
technology, and you smell like buttholes.
And you smell like butthole. You know, and it's the ultimate bait and switch. They come to people, you know, naive people, and say, you can be a god, you can ascend to godhood. But that's not really what you're signing on the dotted line to get. You're getting signed on the dotted line to be an experiment and to be used, and to basically you're going to be an influencer for our agenda until you're of no value to me anymore. And here's the crazy thing, you know, I kind of grew up always hearing like, it's a lie. You're not going to become like the gods. It's a lie. They're lying. They're actually not. They're actually telling you the truth when they say that you can become a little G God. But here's the irony. Psalm 82, you know where I'm going with this. The fate of the gods is that they will die like men. And so the part of godhood that they're offering you isn't their power and their glory and their arcane knowledge. It's that at the end, once you accept our version of eternal life, this transhumanism or whatever it's going to be, once you receive our eternal life, when we all stand side by side and shoulder to shoulder together at the judgment, and we get, you know, the sentence of dying like men, you're going to get that sentence too. Welcome to godhood.
It's such a trick. It's such a it's even more of a nasty trick than just like you'll be like God. No, in fact, you will be like God. But with the small g, you didn't read the fine print.
Yep.
It's just
That's it.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping that we get to a point
Yep.
where like this veil is lifted and we get to see them, and you see that raggedy little body, and all it is from then on, from that moment forward, it's WWE. It's wrestling moves. It's power bombs on these big-headed, soft-bodied, stinky little butthole beings. It's clotheslines. Like that's what I
Okay.
want. Just give me 10 minutes with these things.
This is what I want, guys. You know those big bulbous heads of theirs? I hope that every time we slam it to the mat, it squeaks.
Oh my god!
I was actually talking to you guys in the pre-chat real quick. I want to bring this up before we have to end it. But on Netflix, there was a documentary, and you were talking
that's
about
right.
Yeah.
fooling the people, right? And like kind of just so it's called Rael or Raelian, and I think I clicked on it because it's originally what got Kanye West banned on Twitter.
Oh.
I don't know if you guys remember this.
Really? Wait.
Yes.
What are you talking about?
He posted this.
Oh,
That's-
symbol.
That's
And
their
there goes
logo.
our YouTube.
Oh.
Well,
It's been a
whatever.
nice run, guys.
It's got to be shown. Well, you see it though. So it's a Jewish star inside of a Nazi
Yes.
symbol, and
They've
he
got
posted that to
UFO.
Listen to
Black
this
hole sun.
though. What's even crazier? He posted that to Elon Musk, and he said, "How's this for offensive?" And then Elon took him. He just banned him. And I know it was Elon that gave the order because he was like immediate, like a reaction. This guy's religion worships UFOs. He says that the UFO or the aliens and the UFOs are the ones that created us. He started a cult in the 80s. And of course, the cult turns into some sex stuff. But he was telling people that like, oh no, Jesus is my brother. Like whatever, no big deal. but these are the guys that made us. We need to worship them. They have great technology. And I'm like, he's describing like literally the Nephilim. And then he went on and, well, I haven't gotten to this part yet. It's like episode 2, but they allude to there being a cloning aspect to his cult. Yeah. Where this cult was in opposition with like George W. Bush. I mean, the son, where he was like, they had to make cloning illegal, which is like, okay, whose side are we on? Like, which devil? This guy, that. But he had to make cloning illegal. He's like proudly making it illegal in Texas at the time, because I think he was a governor or something in Texas. And I'm like, oh my God, this is some Nephilim. I'm not going to say.
That's interesting,
It's
dude.
crazy.
Wow.
Look into these guys, the Raelians. I'm not going to say it here, but we're just going to go ahead and we'll pull that up. That's what that is.
There it is. That's what it is, guys.
But it's so on the nose. And I can't help but imagine the people that are watching on Netflix, they're like, oh, cool, alien story. Yeah, there might be aliens. Oh, but where they really went wrong was he started having sex with all the guys' wives there. Because that's what cults always delve in. They always turn into that. No matter what their goal is, it's like the main guy is always,
This is
planting
my
his
thing,
seed.
though. Right? When people see this, a lot of them will go like, oh, it's a story about a crazy guy. But for me, it's the same thing when I see like the
I
Vedic
don't doubt
gods.
he was talking to something.
That's what I'm
believe his
saying. I'm
story
like, I don't doubt the
100%.
Vedic gods. I think you guys are just worshiping fallen entities, fool. Like, that's what's going on here. I think you're not lying. I think you're actually telling the truth, but you just got deceived.
That's what happened here. I got to watch the rest of it. But the cloning thing, I was like, oh, I was holding on to my seat because I was like, we're talking to her tomorrow.
That's crazy.
This is crazy.
I would love to. We gotta get somebody who does the cloning thing. I know there's a couple of people that are on my radar. I'd love to talk about that. But yeah, man, that's somebody in the chat already said this is known in the 90s in Quebec, Rael. That's interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, a Frenchman. So
the French. Unbelievable.
Quite concerning.
Well, I think this is probably a good place to put a pin in it. Top, you actually made it. I saw you pull your headphones off a couple of times. Hopefully you go out.
They're alive.
And your
They're
living room
okay.
is not on fire and your couch isn't filled with steak knives and all kinds of crazy stuff like that.
she's going to be 6 and she doesn't quite know how to spell as good as she tried to spell her favorite creator's name. She got two letters in and couldn't figure out the rest. So she's like, Daddy, come help me. I was like, I'll come help you. They're being good over there.
Oh, that's nice. Awesome. That's a win.
It's a W. Huge W for me.
A huge W. So, Vicki, can you please tell the audience where they can find your work? And yeah, I think that would be a good place to put a pin in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. You can find me at VickiJoyAnderson.com or VickiJoyAuthor on Instagram. And the book, They Only Come Out at Night, Exposing the Dark Weapon of Sleep Paralysis, is available exclusively on lamarzulli.net.
Very cool. And you guys will be happy to know that when I bought it, it arrived like super fast. LA is really on top of his game over there. Before we go, guys, don't forget to go to we got to get that set up. Don't forget to go to samtripoli.com, find March 30th and come get tickets to hang out with us and we're going to do a live podcast with Sam. That's going to be cool. Today is the last day for the raffle, for the Purge Suddenly raffle. So any merchandise that you purchase from toplobster.com in the Nephilim Death Squad section is going to put you into that raffle. So we'll be reading that off probably next week. And don't forget, guys, go to patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad. You'll gain access to the occasional exclusive episode so you could watch it before it launches the following week, which upsets a lot of people. And you'll also gain access to our Telegram if you sign up at the $5 tier, where you can come and hang out with us and a bunch of other schizophrenic people. So that'll
really
be a lot
what
of fun.
you're getting. What you're paying for is to talk to. All we're doing is curating crazy people in one spot for everyone to talk to. And I wake up every morning, I scroll through the chat, I'm like, this is lit, man. It's like it's a whole new
awesome stuff.
Yeah, I go somewhere else and I'm like, these people don't get me. Like I was in the store just before, I was like, look at this guy, he doesn't get it. But then I look at the chat, I'm like, they get it. So that's all we're doing. We're just gathering crazy
I go to
people.
Walmart. I'm like, these guys are communicating with fallen entities. But if you sign up for the Patreon, we're going to launch a Patreon exclusive episode, a Q&A soon. Top, when are we doing that? Do we have a date picked out?
No
We're
date,
just
no clue, but
stringing
we'll do
you
it.
people along.
Yeah.
We're just telling you it's coming, and we're not going to do. No, we're taking questions right now for the Q&A. It's going to be Patreon members only. So if you sign up, you get to look forward to that. We're trying to give you guys something. We don't know what you want. All right, I guess that's it. Top. We got anything else?
Timothy Alberino on Monday, 3:30. That should be a fun one. It's. I mean, we've been blessed to have the caliber of people that have been on this show come and actually talk to us. You saw what happened with us the past hour and a half, right? We're like, just don't deserve this at all. But hey, thanks for.
We just keep tricking. If we get people to come back, it's amazing. Vicky, if you ever come back, we'll know that you actually like us because we just trick people into coming on the most unhinged show. We just told you that aliens smell like buttholes for the last half hour.
Hey,
so
tell me something I don't already know.
There you go.
That's
You
true.
heard
That's
it
true.
first. Oh my god. This has been fun. Vicky, thank you for joining us.
was a blast.
Guys, I guess we'll see you soon next week. Peace out.
The greatest hypnotist on planet Earth is a oblong box in the corner of the room. It is constantly telling us what to believe is real.
If you can persuade people that what they see with their eyes is what there is to see, you got them. Because they'll laugh in the face of an explanation that portrays the bigger picture of what's happening. And they have.